Hello and welcome to the Juggling Podcast, episode 60. My name is Luke Burge and joining me like normal is Juliane.
Hello, everyone.
And today, we're going to be talking about a bit more about not just contemporary circus, but like modern circus and traditionals. We're going to continue on a conversation.
Which that
we've been having for a while. But first of all, I want to thank all of our Patreon supporters. Shall I do it?
Go for it.
Let's go for it. So everyone who, what are we up to? 58 Patreon supporters who are giving us money at the moment.
Great.
So thank you very much to Marshall and Sid and Matt and Chris and Danny. Thank you very much. And Flo, Hendrik and Joel and Callie and Bethany. Also, thank you to our other levels of the $5 people as well. Kathy, Merrill, the Mysterious Mark, Jeremy, Juliana Kunzendorf. Wow, you still support me on Patreon. Yeah. Thank you very much to Keith, to Mark, to Michael, to Mike, to Neon Juggler, to Statist, to Rafa, and then other people at the $1 and £1 or one whatever level. People
Thank
like
you,
Zach
people.
and Pierre and Greg and Helga and Catherine's and other people like that. Thank you so much to all our Patreon supporters.
Yes.
I hope people have been enjoying the videos that we put out recently. What did we do? I did the 20. Oh no, that was a few months ago. We did the vlog from the Dutch Juggling Convention. I put out a few of those kind of videos. I think we actually did another podcast since then. Oh yeah, I remember what it was. I did the
the pole update.
Yeah, I did a whole video breaking down the pole in my gato trick, the trick that's almost too difficult to learn, but I finally learned a version which I'm proud to share of. So I hope people enjoyed that video. That was a requested video, and other people wanted to do that.
Yeah,
we did. We did the last podcast that we did was about trick bounties and cash for tricks, technical tricks.
Yes.
And what I wanted to do with this podcast, also, like I say, Marshall, that was Marshall's suggestion. His other one was the WJF and juggling on the Olympics. Just judging by the social media stuff, I enjoyed following along with Ivan at the WJF and other jugglers who went to the WJF in Paris. I think it was a good success just because it wasn't in winter in Vegas. It was in summer in Paris. And of course, it's going to be more fun. I don't know what to say about that. It just feels more interesting, you know.
Sure. Sure.
So Juliana isn't so impressed. Either way, let's like I say, last episode we were talking purely about funding for technical jugglers, and like we were putting aside people who want to perform and people who want to, whatever,
be artistic,
compete or whatever. And it was just for people who wanted to be technical. And so I thought we would like follow that up with something from the completely different point of view. And I want to get a little bit into the weeds of where I see. Again, I don't even want to say contemporary circus, but what our current modern scene for juggling and jugglers and circus and jugglers who want to be employed, and what's the new style of juggling, or what's the new like venues to perform in for jugglers.
Yeah. Like circus from the perspective of a juggler.
Well, it's just that we've seen more shows. Like we did have it back on episode, I think it was episode 6 of the podcast.
Yes.
So 54 podcasts ago, we talked about the debate about contemporary circus, because this I think we recorded that in 2019. I just listened back to that podcast and another podcast. I tell you something, our audio quality took a big step up once we moved house into a place where we could have a studio with like sound dampening, and we got professional microphones and things. So
yes.
Barely listenable to those early podcasts where we're just like sitting in a table in an echoey room.
Yeah.
Either way, don't worry too much about that. Anyway, so I listened to that, and that was at the time when this whole open letters to the contemporary circus scene were kind of current, and we had been along to a circus festival where people had made new pieces, and Bauke Levin's first open letter to the contemporary circus community was just included in the program as kind of an introduction to that thing. So, and I've been having lots of conversations about what is contemporary circus and what does it mean and what's the point of it. And then there'd been other open letters, and this was all just happening around about the same time. But that's like 5 years ago now. And in the following 5 years, I've seen a lot more shows, been to a lot more festivals, seen a lot more contemporary circus, seen a lot more other styles of circus.
Yes.
And I kind of just want to talk through some of those things.
Okay.
You know, some of those issues. And I might refer back to some of those open letters which were written in 2016, 2017, 2018.
Yeah.
But I'm not going to get too deep in the weeds, but there are a few things which were mentioned in there, which I now have seen. Like some things which are there in those open letters and other conversations that I had back then.
Yeah.
So if you want to read those open letters, I'm not going to include links, but just type, open letters to the circus community, Bauker Levens and the other people there. You'll find them.
Just for me, like,
what's up?
there was one open letter and then there were a few responses?
Yeah,
Or, like,
there was an open letter.
How many responses
There
were
was various
talking?
different open letters, but the ones that I said, hey, you should read these, and you were like, didn't we do a podcast about this? And I was like, oh, and I listened back and I was like, oh, yeah, that is actually what we're talking about.
But
yes,
just like...
so there was an open letter.
Yeah, I just want a number. There's an open letter. 4 responses.
The ones that I reread for this point, 4 letters.
4 letters.
So
Okay,
you can read them.
That's just
the
what I
first
wanted
one
to
is
know.
interesting.
Yeah.
There's a response. The second one is almost unbearably full of, critic... postmodern gobbledygook, whatever. Okay. in ways like it's a letter to show off how well somebody can write a letter and how many references and how many different people they can quote. And it's almost unbearable, but it has got interesting stuff in it.
Yeah.
But then the favorite one, and I mentioned this in the last podcast that we talked about this.
Yeah.
Is that actually? Let me just bring up my notes here. I should be able to find it. So. I need to make this a bit bigger so I can see it. Yeah, there's the first open letter to the circus, the need to redefine. And then I also read a reply from Bim Mason, artistic director of Circuit Media. A second open letter, The Myth Called Circus, that's also by Bauker Levens. And then open letters to the circus number 3, Who Gets to Build the Future? And that's by Sebastian Kahn. And that's my favorite one because it's all the kind of things that I was thinking reading the previous 2 letters going, wait, why do you get to tell me what the future of circus is going to be? And then he writes a letter which is like, hey, why does Bauker Levens get to say what the future of circus needs to be?
Okay.
So there's some really fun stuff.
And just for like, maybe people weren't listening at the time and stuff.
Okay.
So do you have a little bit of background to the people like Bauker? Like,
she's a director and dramaturge or dramaturg or whatever it is. The person whose job it is to watch lots of things and decide what the thing is going to be. I guess what the show is going to be, but not always directing.
Like a producer,
kind of producer, but also like the dramaturg. And again, coming off of this just from having read a Wikipedia page 10 years ago. It's a role where it's their job within a theatre to be a critic of what the theatre is doing, to make sure that the theatre is staying on track. So it's like an artistic position, but it isn't a director, it isn't a performer. It's more of a whatever.
Artistic director, visionary.
Yeah, I just looked at this because I was going to mention this show, The Games We Play, which is one of these, another circus/juggling show that we saw here, and it's mentioned here as well. So directed and performed by Sean Gandini and Kati Yahokola. Light design, sound design, production, photos, and then like dramaturgy, which is different from direction. And that's Emma Lister is the dramaturge, but who, it's their job to work out how this fits in with other things and what it's trying to say and what it's trying to do.
Okay. And then so in the other responses were also from this kind of like...
It's like other people who've been directors and dramaturges and other people who are looking at circus from a critical point of view as well, not just a performing point of view. I don't want to get too much into these open letters.
No, but I wanted to just know if these were like performers themselves who wrote these. That's kind of like an important start point.
And that's actually one of the interesting things that Sebastian Kahn comes out, which is pretty much saying most people who are working on new material aren't looking at it and going, now let me critique what I'm thinking about through the, what does this mean if it's postmodern enough, or how does it fit in with the history of... No, they're just trying to make something. Yeah. And so it's the dramaturg's job, dramaturg, don't know how to pronounce it, it's their job to actually say, okay, what are you trying to say with this? And is there something you're trying to, it's their job to like tease that out of what the actual people on stage and what the directors are trying to do. It's like to give guidance in that way.
Okay.
So it's a great place, but most people aren't coming to juggling in that kind of critical way. They're like, I want to make a show.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So... let's put that aside now, and I'll come back to some of the things that are in these letters, because that's what I'm trying to say, that these letters, these open letters, and my own thoughts, and the last time we talked about this was from like that 2016 to 2018, 2019 era, and I thought it was way earlier than that, but I guess I've just done a lot since then and seen a lot since then.
Yes, a lot has happened.
So we've seen a lot of other shows.
Yes.
Some examples of shows that I've seen since then, which I think you could be... which I'll bring up. Things like Roller Coaster by Wes Peden.
That came to mind straight away.
The Games We Play, Why the Gandinis by Sean and Catty.
Yeah.
I Was Told by Catherine Wagner, Catherine Pancakes. People. I'm just using these as examples because one of the things I always get annoyed about is that it's difficult to find examples that everybody or enough people have seen and enough people know about.
Yeah.
That there can be like a common language or a common list of examples that we can all use.
Yes, or even like a conversation about it.
Yeah,
if nobody has seen it, it's
so
difficult.
I'm using shows which have been seen at big juggling conventions.
Yeah.
So let's bring. I might bring up some other shows as well, but I'm just saying that these are things that I might reference throughout here.
Okay.
Also, another podcast that I listened back to, which was Notes on Creation, which was the podcast where I was talking through. This was in 2022.
Yeah.
I was talking through what I wanted my show to be.
Yeah.
When I performed it in 2023, and I was working on a show, and I re-listened to that because I remember grappling with the things that I wanted my show to be, even though I don't really consider myself a circus artist or a contemporary circus artist or whatever you want to be. I am creating work, and I do see what I'm doing is like in conversation with what other people are doing in the juggling world.
Yeah.
Even though, kind of a bit off to the side. But that's what I want to talk about. So I'm going to go back to the top of my notes here. And I'm going to define circus.
Yes.
These juggling acts or these juggling shows are going to be included in there.
Yeah.
Because I think they can fit.
Okay.
My definition of circus, which I actually talked about in this previous episode 6 or whatever it was, when we were talking about contemporary circus, is that what I think, if you have these things, it defines circus. And if some of these things aren't there, it's probably more something else than it is circus.
Right.
So the first thing is it's got to be live. It's no point in having a video of something. So it has to happen live in front of people.
Yeah.
It has to be based around physical skills.
Okay.
So it's not just talking.
Yeah.
There has to be physical skills there.
Yeah.
And it has to be trick based. So it can't just be dancing as a skill. There has to be like moments of elevated tension, which are dependent on gravity taking over. And if someone's doing something acrobatic or flying or something like that, there has to be a moment where something is suspended in the air, either by gravity or by someone holding on or by jumping or whatever like that. So that includes most of what we think of as circus acts. Or the other danger is that person might fall off that horse, or that person might be eaten by a tiger, or that elephant might step on somebody. There's the animal. If there's animals in the circus, there's also like danger and other stuff there.
Yeah.
And finally, the other thing that has to happen is that the artists have to take turns to do different things on stage. So it's like that variety kind of stuff. That there can be lots of people on stage, but one person has to become the focus of attention, and then there has to be a change, and then other people do it. Like there could be clowns come out in between, or a ringmaster come out in between, or if it's like in a variety show, whatever, the host comes out. Or if it's in a more like a different show. And again, just to bring up these examples of the shows that I've seen, like Roller Coaster is one person on stage, but Wes himself takes turns to do different things on stage.
Yes.
He does a bit of ball juggling, he does a bit of other thing, he does a bit of like dance stuff, he does a bit of movement. And in between there is sort of like he has a soundtrack, like a narrator, which narrates in handily whatever the local language is he's performing, and that does the narration, and then he does another thing. So that turn taking, which is very different from like say of course, in a concert, you do a song and then there's another song and another song. I'm just saying, like, to contrast it with some other things, like, it's often the same thing done again and again and again. if you know what I mean. Like in a concert, it's music and then more music and more music and more music. Whereas with circus, I always feel like there should be some variety. And even if it's someone who just does ball juggling, they'll often go, right, here's a bit with 1 ball, here's a bit with 5 balls, and they'll always try and break it up into like sections of a show.
Like just from my understanding, you're talking for like an hour and a half form of entertainment.
And specifically, I want to be talking now about shows which aren't just an act in a variety show.
Yes, okay.
That it has to be a show.
Yes.
That isn't just like, oh, here we are at a convention and we're going to have various people juggling and a host in between.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It has to be like a set show.
Okay.
And I'm saying if those things are mostly included, it's probably some form of circus.
Okay.
But I will put aside for now, like German variety and, vaudeville and music hall, because again, that's kind of got a different history and it's not rooted in the same circus tradition.
Okay.
So now I'll just go through some of these terms or these things that I have in my head, which are like the steps that circus have taken along the way.
Okay.
And the first few are going to be really obvious. Traditional circus. What does that mean? Probably in a big top. Probably animals. Definitely clowns. Probably a ring master.
Yeah.
And there will definitely be an acrobatic show. There will definitely be an animal show. There'll definitely be a juggler show. They'll have one of each act, if you know what I mean.
Yes.
And the clowns will come on and the ringmaster will come. But over time, though, it gets to the point where you can't really use animals very much anymore because animals is seen as animal cruelty. So there's still very traditional circus, but instead of animals, they'll use motorbikes. And there's like a definite set style. It's very, very traditional circus. Very traditional. But they'll bring out, like the globe of death or whatever they do, and they roll the motorbikes around the inside. They'll have somebody do some BMX. They'll have some dirt jumping kind of thing.
Yeah,
I say motorbikes. I've seen people instead of it, they just did an animal thing, but somebody was on this big bicycle with these huge big monster truck wheels, and would just ride around in circles, and a whole clown act happened on that thing going on. I was like, oh, this would normally be like an elephant act or a horse act or one of the acts where they have llamas going around, whatever it was, and it was just somebody just pedaling. His only job was to get and just pedal around. I was like, oh, that's a perfect animal act replacement for a traditional circus.
Yes.
And that's what I always see with these, circus flick flack. It's like, it's not traditional circus. Like, no, every single act is a traditional circus. It's just that they've got some heavy metal style, heavy rock music playing, and whatever
motors,
and motorbikes, and so that kind of thing. So that's the traditional. Then you had the cirque nouveau, like the new French circus, where they were like, hey, and this is stuff that's been talked about many times, even talked about in those open letters where they're like, what we should do is combine circus with theatre. But the issue is that there was theatre. Wait, here's a circus act. Okay, the circus acts are finished. Theatre. Wait, here's the circus act. Okay, the circus act, it's that kind of stepping on. So it's like theatre plus circus or circus plus theatre. And that's still one of the main forms of entertainment, or one of the main forms of circus, even if it's not it's so influential that there's so many even juggling acts. Almost every street show act will be this way. Someone will come on and they'll not street shows in circle shows, busking, but at street theaters, people will come on and they'll have a character and a costume and they'll do something, and then that story will stop, and then there'll be a juggling act or a whatever act. You understand what I'm saying? There's
the story and the theatre is like the bridging element between
kind of disconnected circus acts.
Yeah.
And we've all seen shows which are still very much like this. So then let's do it this way. Let's move on to contemporary circus. Contemporary circus is we want to perform in a black box theatre, but we're not going to do theatre storytelling. We're not going to do traditional, storytelling. We're gonna bring in more stuff from experimental dance, experimental theatre, puppetry, experimental music,
improvisation.
Improvisation, improvisation games and things that are played. Yeah. And this creates that whole very serious French style of show.
Yeah.
And there's a reason it's very French, is because in France, those black box theatres don't really care what's going on as long as it's a bit weird and artistic and pushing the limits and boundaries in some ways.
Yeah.
You go along and see it, and it doesn't matter if it's dance or theatre or poetry or puppetry or shadow play or mime or circus or juggling. It's like, you know, the style of show that you're going to get if you see that kind of show.
Yes.
You know, that's what you're expecting. So that's, those are kind of where you would like, you know, that brings us up until like the 90s or something, 80s, 90s. And then we get what I'd call like the modern circus, but which is, it's like modern. It's not postmodern yet, but it's still very modern. What I would call cirque style circus. In other words, we're doing all of the acts, but instead of it being like individual acts, like here's a person and now here's another person, the show is sculptured. So there's a single look throughout the whole show. There's a single soundtrack throughout the whole show.
Right.
And it's very much about these fantastic costumes which remove the humanity from people, even though they still look really sexy because they're like skin tight, but the faces will be obscured. Their shapes of the humanity will be removed from them in a way, and they will become more like even more caricatured, but like in a way that they now look like lizards or aliens or animals or something like that. Of course, now there's not a chance that it'll ever be an animal. Also, no motorbikes, nothing technological, because it's very rooted in kind of new agey, we're all one with the world kind of stuff.
Okay.
But has a very specific look, to the point that now, if you say a cirque-style act, everybody knows exactly what you mean, even though cirque is just French for circus or whatever, but it means Cirque du Soleil. Everyone knows it means Cirque du Soleil.
Yes.
And also in those shows, like I say, very modern, but not postmodern. No irony in those at all. The show is never about the show, and the characters are always completely believed. There's no winking at the audience. Everything is beautiful, and you like it because it's beautiful. Yeah. Not because it's winking at you that it knows it's beautiful. It's just beautiful.
That's the aim.
The skill is very skillful.
Yeah.
Everything is right on the surface.
Yeah.
Which is why it's very modern.
Yes.
Not yet postmodern. And here's the thing. I'm going to just read a quote from this first open letter. Well, actually, no, I won't get to there yet. So let's talk about now some of these postmodern shows that we've seen.
Okay.
I want to talk a bit about Zach McAllister's Trick Machine and the Gandini's show, which is the Games We Play, which are two shows. We saw one of them live. Yeah. The other one, I guess I was a Patreon of Zach McAllister at the right time, and we watched the video of his show Trick Machine, which again I think he performed at the IJ Festival and other places. So you know it's a well seen show. So I don't mind talking about it here as an example. Okay. Not my problem with it. What these are good examples of is postmodern, circus.
Self-observant.
Because, and here's the really important thing, or the distinction, is that they're shows which are constantly... They know that they're shows. The Games We Play is Sean and Catty looking back at, being circus artists or jugglers and, directors and creators of the last 30 years, talking about all the stuff that's normally in their show. Mm-hmm. And it's always about, it's like, if the show is about putting the show together, it's definitely postmodern in some way. Yeah. And I really enjoyed both of the shows. However, I found the insistence on the postmodern or the aspect that comes out of postmodernism, which is the winking at the audience, which is the irony, which is that detachment, yes. That like emotional detachment, and always undercutting a moment when there could be true beauty on stage, or even true emotion, and a connection to the audience. It's always like it goes really far and far and far, as in like you're welling up in tears, and then something happens that then cuts that off really sharply. Yeah. Well, it's not even that you're welling up in tears, but it's like, it done well, that kind of like detachment, that distancing of emotion is effective. And I think Zach McAllister did it really well in his Trick Machine show. But, and here's me being a critic about this now, is that I find that kind of stifling because I want it just to be modern, if you know what I mean. I want it not to be a show about a show, and I don't want my enjoyment of a beautiful moment to be undercut by suddenly the nice music cutting to something else and the person performing on stage kind of winking at me or like going, oh, I can't believe, yeah, I really am doing this, you know. And
it feels like, sorry to interrupt you, but it feels like that it's kind of sometimes invalidating the emotion that you just had. You know, it feels like, oh, you fell for it, didn't you?
Yeah. And that's the thing that I felt so often watching Zach McAllister's Trick Machine, is that I was like, oh, this is a really beautiful moment. Oh, he's undercut it. He's not let me just enjoy this on that, you know, appreciation of this nice moment. Yeah. And again, that's not so much criticism of what's happening. It's more like a taste. That's for me, it's taste. Because I find it's unsatisfying to have an emotion presented to me and then, like you say, it being snatched away and going, no, you're not actually allowed to feel emotion in that way. And it was very much the same, even more so with the games we play by Sean and Catty. Yeah. So many of their previous shows that they were referencing in that show allowed me to feel the correct emotions. Like when they do the table juggling and I'm like, oh, this is complicated. And in their previous shows that they're referencing in the games we play, it allowed me to be confused by the complicatedness. Yes. Whereas there, they were like, oh, that's too complicated. Isn't it too complicated? And I was like, oh, Sean, don't tell me that it's too complicated and take that away. And there's other shows where they're doing something beautiful. And in this games we play, literally they would point at each other and go, that's too beautiful. Do something like more, you know. And at one point he's telling a story. Sean is telling a story about a moment in the Holocaust or something, and it's like this really dramatic moment. And just as it gets to this dramatic moment, where I was like, wow, this is powerful storytelling and powerful theatre, and this is a powerful moment, immediately was undercut by, actually, we're going to move on. This is actually too emotional. Oh, yeah, we're going to move on. And then, and now we're getting to the end of the show. But let's undercut that. And like, it was even difficult for me to clap and enjoy the show at the level that I wanted to, because again, I'm not even sure what I'm trying to say. It's like, I wanted to just show my appreciation. I wanted to feel those emotions without being told, these emotions are too much. Yes. Which is that like trap, which I find a trap of postmodernism with that detachment, and this is not just what I see in circus. It's not just what I see in these juggling shows.
It's a postmodern symptom.
It's so much. I read so many books where I'm like, oh, this is really scary, and then the characters in the book will go like, oh, I hope this isn't too scary for you. No, I'm okay. And I'm like, oh no. And it's sort of like, it's the author winking at the reader going, it's not too scary. No, are we all good with it? Okay. Well, we can't allow you to have and it kind of flattens out the emotions that I can have, or that I feel that I'm being allowed to have by the performer. Yeah. And that's not to say the individual moments aren't great. Again, like, these weren't bad shows. I enjoyed all of both of these shows. It's just that I kind of was longing for that moment where I was allowed to just feel the full, pure emotion without it being undercut.
Yes, and I think what comes down to at these kind of like, this is now, again, and we've seen this all over in many kind of places where postmodernism is a thing, like architecture comes to mind, where we're coming to the edge point where I think people are realizing how you have to see all this on such an intellectual level. Yeah. You can't just enjoy it for the beauty and the emotion's sake. Yeah. You always have to analyze in your brain, okay, what's going on? Oh, wow, they're taking it on the meta level, and from the meta level, and the overthink. While you are experiencing something, you get the enjoyment through analyzing what's happening, constantly kind of critiquing, thinking, and like
And that's the thing.
appreciating.
It's the people who are too. They're being too clever.
Yes.
And it's fine to be clever, but when you're being too clever, you're kind of like robbing people. Like, I just got up this morning and watched a bit of clip from Glastonbury of Coldplay performing Fix You.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, well, there's no way I wasn't going to cry at that. And then you got up, half an hour later.
Yeah.
And
you
I was
scrolled through and I saw it and I thought, oh my God.
And I was like, I'll go and make you breakfast. So I went and made you breakfast and came back with you a coffee. And as I left, I just clicked on the same video. And I came back in, 6 minutes later with a cup of coffee and some cereal or whatever for you. Brought it back and there's just you, like, tears stream down your... And this is a song, and I'm just bringing this up because I just thought, well, I didn't think of this at the time, but it when I saw it this morning, I was like, oh, this is a song which literally has the lines, tears stream down your face.
Yeah.
And I mean, they had Michael J. Fox on stage and were saying, oh yeah, watching Back to the Future made us want to be a rock band, and now here he is on stage, like in a wheelchair. And you're just like, oh, right, okay. Chris Martin is somebody who knows how to write a song.
Yeah.
Which is about fixing somebody, and it's a song about writing a song about fixing or whatever it is, and it's writing about tears, but he knows how to orchestrate 100,000 people watching him in a field
and singing
at
along.
Glastonbury and singing along. So again, that's just an example for music, but what I'm trying to say is let's now move on to Roller Coaster by Wes Peden.
Yeah.
And Roller Coaster by Wes Peden is one of the shows which I would call Metamodern. So let's go back over to this is where I was going to just do this open letter bit here as well. So there's this thing here in this first open letter.
Yeah.
By Bauke Levens from 2016. And she wrote, we are gradually moving away from the dead end of postmodernism aversion towards binding narratives. That she's more talking about like telling a story or something.
Yeah.
It is as if we have hesitantly started to articulate, I can't say the word articulate. Oh, the irony. We've started to articulate a growing desire for sincerity, community, and change, but always with the awareness that the ground on which we stand is drenched with irony. So here's a show. I think Roller Coaster is metamodern, and that metamodern was mentioned here as well.
Yeah.
And metamodernism. We even watched a YouTube video about it, didn't we?
Yes.
Who's that guy who talks solemnly about movies? And I'm like, they're just movies. Why are you getting so into them? And then you watch him, you're like, oh, actually, no, you are. He does tease out. I can't remember the guy's name, but he was talking about, like, why does the new Top Gun movie just feel like an old-fashioned movie? It's because it's modern. There's no irony in it. It's a story about a hero who overcomes the challenges, succeeds in the end, and it's Tom Cruise. So he runs really well, and they actually put people they actually put people in fighter jets. So when you get footage of them with the eyeballs popping out the head, and
they look like that.
They're actually pulling 4 5Gs, and that's why they look like they're pulling 5Gs. Is because they're actually. So it's like there's nothing hidden. There's nothing hidden. Well, it doesn't even matter that it is hidden. It's like the emotions that we're telling you to feel right now are the emotions that you should be feeling.
Yeah.
And they are valid, feel them, and we're going to do that to the best of our abilities.
Yeah.
Compared to all of the postmodern movies, which are undercutting that, and they're like, oh, aren't we so clever? This is a movie about being in a movie or whatever. And then they used the Everything Everywhere All at Once movie to show there's an example of metamodernism, which is, we know this is a movie. We know it's a movie about a movie. Mm-hmm. Literally, the actors come on stage and are playing themselves, at some point. They're going between different worlds, and in different worlds they're movie stars. It's a movie about movies, and it's a movie about movie making. It's also a movie about what it's like to be on the internet all the time and growing up like that. It's a movie about technology and all that kind of stuff. But when it gets to the end, or when it gets to the emotional moments are felt completely, and there isn't the postmodern urge to undercut the emotions. Mm-hmm. It's using the postmodernism structure of it's a movie about a movie, or it's a movie that knows it's a movie. Yeah. But it's a movie that knows it's a movie and it's a movie about being a movie, but it's also the emotions that you feel are valid and real, and we're not going to undercut them now. It's now your turn. It's now your moment to cry at what's happening or punch the air at what's happening, but we're not going to take that away from you.
Yeah.
We're not going to undercut it in any way. And that's kind of like that it's like postmodernism, but without the ironic detachment which flattens people's emotions and removes them away from you. And I think Wes Peden's Roller Coaster is that.
Yes.
It's a show that knows it's a show. It's a show with a very postmodern idea of having a voiceover that's commenting about the person on the stage.
Yeah.
I mean, again, putting aside all the juggling or whatever's going on there, like there's like listening to the soundtrack. One of them is called No Downsides. So Wes Peden does a routine about how if he drops now, there's no downside because he's allowed to then do a silly moment, a silly trick.
Yeah.
And it's a great way for him to just try out the most technically difficult 5 Club tricks or whatever it is. And it's a great moment, and there's moments of triumph in it.
Yeah.
But it's also postmodern because it knows what it's doing. It's saying, I'm doing a show where I might drop live in front of you, but don't worry about that because that then allows... And it's very, very clever, but the emotions are real. When he's talking in the voiceover, he mentions about being dyslexic. You're like, oh, I feel something here.
Yeah.
You know, when he talks about the love for roller coasters, there's not like, but of course I don't really love roller coasters, do I? Because loving roller coasters would be, that's, stupid or childish or not worth it. So it's about roller coasters. But it's not really about roller coasters. No,
but it is.
But it really is about somebody who loves roller coasters and wants to do that, even if it's not. Like, I don't care if it's like not true or whatever.
For the storytelling, it is. That's all that matters.
The show works as a metamodern, rather than just postmodern.
Yeah.
So it's like that postmodernism, but you can't say postmodernism. It's metamodern. So this is another. Oh, and also the I Was Told show is like that as well. Yeah. Because Catherine there is doing a show which is about doing a show. She's on stage saying, hey, I'm doing a show now, aren't I? Yes, you're watching me do a show. Anybody got any questions?
Yes.
And then it's a show about how difficult it is to put on a show or how to be booked. Like, you want to be booked in a show, but you're a woman. So it's a show about that kind of stuff.
It's very self-reflective. And I must say, I've seen the show once.
Yeah, I've seen it like
twice.
3 times. 2 or 3 times now.
And so it's really weird because the postmodernist setup and show and world that we lived in for some time has kind of had an influence on me, how I sit there and see a show that isn't that, and I can't trust it because I don't know. So I was sitting there and I wasn't sure what was being asked of me, like, because she's saying like tell me what to do.
Yes.
And like and so for me, from my experience with the postmodernism of never trust anything, I was thinking, okay, what direction is this now going to go? What are people going to say? So I don't remember exactly what I then said out loud, or if I said anything out loud, but I had like thoughts of like all the things that could happen, all the and so I am so informed and so
you're conditioned and
a little bit traumatized, to be honest. Sometimes
you're traumatized by the irony,
and so I can never just relax and enjoy whatever emotional thing I can.
This is what I'm saying. If you're watching any of these more traditional or like modern, like this Cirque du Soleil style, you never have to worry about this.
Yeah.
And actually, the one thing that I hated most about one of the Cirque du Soleil I've seen like 3 Cirque du Soleil shows live.
Right.
And the one I disliked the most was where they got someone out of the audience and did like an audience participation bit with them.
Yeah.
And then halfway through it, I liked, oh, that's a plant. That's not a real volunteer.
Oh.
And I was like, oh no. And the clowning that they did with these 2 clowns and the audience volunteer, then they kind of stole his wallet and went off, and he followed them backstage. And I was like, no. And by then I already clocked, and I was like, oh, a normal volunteer wouldn't respond that way. And I know because I've done so much audience volunteer stuff with my own. And I was like, oh no, that person's gone.
You got tricked.
And then, I was only tricked for a minute, but then I was just disappointed that in the second half, this audience volunteer was then just a member of the show and was just one of the clowns, but he was one of the clowns who was just wearing like a jumper and jeans or whatever.
Yeah.
And of course you look him up in the program and he's just listed as, character or whatever.
Yes.
And I was like, oh, Cirque du Soleil, you gave in to
that little bit. Yeah.
Oh, here's audience volunteer. Here's audience participation. But it's not really audience And I was like, you tricked me. You got me there.
And so to circle back to Catherine's show.
Yes.
That's not what happened. And to be honest, that because it wasn't like that, had an even bigger emotional impact on me.
Yeah.
Because it wasn't only validating my emotions, but it was also like hugging me.
Yeah. It was hugging you.
Hugging me. As in I could relax into it and then just enjoy it. And I then knew, okay, I don't need to have tension, continuously tension, like what to expect.
Yeah.
I could just relax.
Yeah,
enjoy it
as a modern thing.
As in what she did with the modern kind of combination of spoken words, music, visuals, and like it felt really comfortable.
Yeah.
And I kind of only just noticed how much of this starting the show was so weird to me because I literally was tense and I didn't quite know.
Well, the thing is, I saw it when she did it at the British Juggling Convention, and there it was a full house, like big, like instead of just being like 60 people watching it, it was like 200, 300 people watching it, and there everybody wanted to succeed, and everyone was joking, and because it's all British people, and everyone was wanting to be comedian. And when she gets on stage and sort of like, "Hey, what do you want me to do?" It was like fun and triumphant straight away. It was triumphant.
Yes.
And then when she did it at the EJC, the time that we saw it, I think she did it like 6 times or whatever. But when we saw it, there wasn't many people in there, and it felt way more vulnerable because it felt like she was having to like win us over and like try and get control. Anyway, I'm just saying, like, because the emotions were real, and the audience were allowed to feel whatever real emotions that they were feeling.
Yeah.
When I watched it with two different audiences, the first half completely different vibes.
Yeah.
Completely. It was almost like watching a different show.
Yeah.
That first 20 minutes where she's doing this ring balancing and asking for challenges or asking people to tell her what to do.
Yeah.
The end of the show, it was the same because she then kind of takes over and there isn't anything improvised or like maybe some improvised stuff, but don't worry too much about it.
It's more scripted.
Yeah. So that's what I want to talk about. There is that there is this now juggling shows, circus shows that I've seen which are metamodern. In other words,
using modern aspects.
Yeah, using postmodern aspects of knowing the show is the show, but also then being fine, being okay with it, you allowing your emotions to be valid and allowing people those emotional responses.
Yeah, and it becomes literally
there
the
is
opposite.
More to metamodernism and postmodernism than this. I'm just using these examples.
Of course. But so it's literally becoming the opposite. It's not ironic detachment, it's emotional attachment in a way. To what's happening. Yeah. To the idea of, I know this is a show about doing a show and stuff.
I'm doing a show about a show. So and again, I don't need to go into this too much, but when I was working on my show, my 2323 show, one of the most important things to me was that I didn't, I even said when I just know this because I was listening back to that podcast where I was talking about notes on creation, and I was saying what I wanted the show to be.
Yes.
And I said there, I want people to watch my show, and of course it's going to be about a show looking back at me, and it was actually, that's what was kind of weird to then look back at, like when I was watching this Games We Play where Sean and Catty are looking back as well. I was like, these are 2 shows about looking back. But I said that I would really like it for people to cry at the end of my show.
Yeah.
And I want to move people so they can either be in silence for 10, 15 minutes as I do something, and also cry if I do something, like if I get a trick or something that means a lot to me.
Yeah.
And I don't think anyone actually cried in my shows, but I have got that reaction times now when I do Anthony Gatto's trick.
Yeah.
And I tell people this trick changed my life because when I saw Anthony Gatto perform this trick on stage, it blew me away so much, and it was like the standout moment for me in the whole show. Watching him do this made me want to be a juggler.
Yeah.
Made me want to be a performing juggler, made me want to be a professional juggler, literally after that, I set my goal that I wanted to headline like a public show or a gala show at a national juggling convention.
Yes.
And now I can say that, and that's true.
Yeah.
And so my whole 23 show was based around actually being like very proud of what I've achieved. You know, when I open the book, the Encyclopedia of Ball Juggling, and point at my name in the book and say, here's, I mean, again, a book written by a friend of mine, but still, it's mentioned in there, like winning the People's Choice Award at the 2004 IGA. Again, I do undercut that slightly by saying I won the People's Choice Award. But again, it's still like that's kind of an award which showed I belong here as a professional. I can use it validates it, you know, and the different things, you know, and I've talked about this on stage. I am good enough. I was good enough to get world records, although that bit was cut from the show. Like I didn't use those bits, but all the things that I was talking about was sort of like in that thing, like, I'm not one of the greats. I'm not the greatest of all time. I'm nowhere near the greatest of all time. But can I be at that next level down? You know, like I'm not a Federer, Nadal, or Djokovic, but can I be an Andy Murray? I'm saying that because Andy Murray is playing at Wimbledon for the last time now as well. But those were the things. Those were like the things that I had in my brain. Yeah. Like, why is it that people cry when Andy Murray comes out onto centre court for the last time? It's not because he's the best of all time, but he makes you feel things, you know. Yeah. So I did make a show. In the end, 23 was a show about making a show. Yeah. But I like to think that I avoided the pitfalls of ironic detachment and leaned into the metamodernism ideas of genuine emotions and allowing people to, if I do something really good, allow people to feel my triumph. Yeah. If I mess up on stage, allow people to feel disappointment, frustration, you know, whatever emotion that I'm feeling or have felt or am trying to express, allow people to experience those emotions to the same extent or the highest extent or the most important extent. Mm-hmm. Again, don't think anyone's actually cried during seeing my show, but I've
you don't know, it was dark.
Again, but I'm just saying I've choked up on stage thanking the audience for letting me perform the Anthony Gatto trick for them. And people, like, when I've got the trick, I was like, oh, that means a lot to me. Thank you so much for allowing me. And I've had rounds of applause when I have thanked people for allowing, you know, that kind of thing. And I'm like, oh, this is a show. I'm in a show telling people what the show is. Yeah. And they're giving me, and it doesn't feel like I'm asking for a round of applause, but people are generally happy for me to get a trick.
I think I cried when you did the back crosses.
The 5 club back crosses.
Just the music and the thing, and it just
because that's the moment.
You used the Chopin music.
Yes,
and it's like,
so I used the Chopin music again. Sergei Ignatov performed to that same music, not the 5 club back crosses, but that was me again. I shared that video online of that version of when I did it at the BJC with me saying, I'm growing old now. This might be the last time I ever do 10 catches of 5 club back crosses on stage, and the music comes on. Yeah. And I wanted this to be a goodbye to a trick, a very difficult trick. That I got it on the first attempt, and everyone goes crazy. But I'm like, yes, I got it. And I'm like, is this? And that's the genuine emotion that I wanted people to feel. Like, that's very technically difficult. He's now 43 years old or 42. Like, he's, you know, you're moving on in age. This might be the last time I ever do it. Yeah. I have not done 10 catches of 5 club back crosses on stage since then. Yeah. Still do it though. Tried it the other day. First try. Still do it. But now in my show, in my normal show, I kind of don't want to do the 10 catches. I want to just do 7 catches if I'm doing that same thing, because it feels like I'm then cheating the people who saw me do that for the last time out of it.
Yeah.
So
you want to dial it down.
So I need to dial it down. So the next time I perform that, even if I'm performing for other jugglers, I'll have to do 9 catches because I've already done the last time I'm doing 10 catches of 5 club back crosses. And this sounds stupid, and I'm literally talking about I'm doing this on stage, so it's very postmodern, but the emotions are true and real. Okay, that was a longer diversion into metamodernism that I wanted to do. So let's go into these last 3 areas, shall I, of circus. Yeah. So there is actually, I'm going to take a drink. So say hello. Say something.
Okay, I'm saying something. So didn't quite listen to what we're talking about next now.
Okay, so 3 more things 3 more like styles of circus that I want to bring up again, which are more modern. Again, I don't want to say too modern because not postmodern or whatever. Let's put aside postmodern and metamodernism because these kind of things are working on like a different level, like on a different axis or a different, whatever. Yeah. So there's a style of circus show which I'd like to call post-cirque show.
Yeah.
Post-cirque style circus. Don't know. It's not a name. I'm just referencing that. Which is the seven fingersification of circus now.
Yes.
Which is the seven fingers was what's that in French when they say the seven fingers of the hand? Well, I can't remember. Either way. Whatever it is. Digits. Forget it. Don't worry about it. I'm going to cut that out. I'm not going to cut that out. I don't edit. Either way, don't worry about it. Whatever they are called in French, set up in Montreal, and it was very, very specific. 7 ex-Cirque du Soleil people who set up the company.
This is more like circus company kind of.
Yeah, so it's still a circus company.
Yeah.
Don't need to get too much into it, but it was very specifically a reaction against the big production costume. So what it created
against big corporate circus.
Yeah, let's hold that thought. The corporateness of Cirque du Soleil or whatever's going on there.
Yeah.
What it is the idea of like, okay, not fantastically colourful costumes. How about humans in a home, because their show was called Loft. Mm-hmm. Humans in a home, hanging out together and just doing stuff and entertaining each other.
Very relatable.
Very relatable.
Yeah.
Of course, it was a theatre show, so there was a bit of fourth wall breaking.
Yeah.
But it wasn't a show about putting a show together. It was about storytelling. It was very theatrical. Mm-hmm. And it was a bit of that, Cirque Nouveau kind of like a bit of theatre and then an act, a bit of theatre and a bit of act. There was clowning and there was definitely taking turns. There was lots of traditional stuff there. But the idea of it being, let's identify with these people as humans first rather than as performers.
Yeah.
So the show was very, very effective in us getting to know this cast of characters and seeing how they interact with each other in a perfect theatre kind of way. But the circus was really strong, and the acts were really strong.
Yeah. Didn't they also use their own names?
Yes, they use their own names, so that's the kind of thing.
That's part of it.
Yeah, Patrick was Patrick. The guy who did the diary was Patrick. The other people, they were using their real names. Yeah. They were using, it was their own bodies, and again, it's coming away from this. It's difficult to explain because it's very theatrical. But there was this rawness to it, where if anybody... Like Patrick was clowning. There is clown routines, but there weren't clowns. Yeah. So if you think about the traditional circus is animals and skills and clowns, and then then the contemporary circus, which is like like circus but without any no facial expressions allowed. But then modern circus is more like the Cirque style is like okay, still clowns, no animals, but that. And here is sort of like okay, no animals, no, not gonna have any animals. Also, no clowns, nothing to interrupt us, and also everybody is on stage the whole time. And again, it's very modern, very successful. And what you're trying to say there, which is like, it was a reaction against the commercialization. I don't think it was, because those people worked in Cirque du Soleil and they knew how fantastically successful commercially Cirque du Soleil style shows can be.
Oh yeah.
They weren't anything against the commercial.
I was more talking about the size of it. Like it's a whole like.
No, yes, but here's the okay. What I find interesting about this, let me just talk about this open letter. What the open letter was these open letters were wanting was saying, circus should be, this is Bauker Levin saying, circus should be subversive and weird and surprising and all that other kind of stuff. And these shows were the opposite of that. They weren't weird. Yeah. They weren't anything. They were an alternative to what circus was, but like suddenly struck out in a path which you couldn't see coming.
Yeah.
And was also fantastically successful to the point where they had many shows going around the world.
Yeah.
And now they have their dual reality, and there's like how many forecasts of dual reality going at any one point.
Count now.
You lose count. There's some on a cruise ship, some doing the Edinburgh, some doing a tour. Which is great, and it's a fantastic opportunity for lots of jugglers to perform. We just saw Isadora going over there, Miguel Gigos Ronda
being
in the
on
same
contract.
show.
Yeah, it's nice.
Yeah, you see Etienne Chauzy and then Zen Pen,
Sophia,
and Sophia
just leaving.
We are loads of people that we know and are hanging out with.
It's great employment
opportunities. But actually, it gets to the point where it suddenly doesn't matter what their names are anymore.
Yeah.
And when you say, oh, they use their own names, which was true. I saw the original, the first time I saw the Seven Fingers Loft show, I've seen it 3 times.
Yeah.
The first time was with a mix between the original cast and the Berlin cast.
Yeah.
So they had a Montreal cast and then they wanted to set up a show in Berlin.
Yeah.
So they got in some other people. Jay Gilligan was one of them, Matthias, whatever his name is. They got in like 4 new people and had 3 of the original cast.
Yeah.
And then I also saw it in Berlin with all of the original Montreal cast. They did a show, and I was like, oh, this show is so much better with the original cast, because of course it was, because it's written by them.
Yeah, for them.
And then I saw it again with the part of Patrick being played by Jacob Sharp.
Yeah.
My name's Jacob instead of I am Jacob instead of I am Patrick. And I'm like, oh, it's a completely different show, and it might as well have just been a different show.
Yeah.
Because you're realizing that show was too personal for it to be a commercial success or like an artistic theatrical success. It was a commercial success, but for me, having seen the original, it couldn't be as meaningful because the story that was being told was about these original cast members, not about whatever the C, D, E, F, G cast was.
Yeah. It becomes like you have an artistic exclamation with the first show that was written for and by the people.
Yes.
Anything that you then take off from there for the repeatability, for the repetition of a thing, at that point it loses the artistic appeal and like not appeal but the artistic original meaning
and clarity of the original meaning. Because it's somebody else playing the part of Patrick playing the part of Patrick.
Yes. It is a little bit like I'm sorry now I'm comparing something. If you have an original oil painting artwork, and then that's in its own right has a certain value and a certain artistic thing, and then in our world currently you get prints of something which is then you can reproduce it. And it does lose something. It does lose something.
Yeah.
Does it?
So let's talk about the next step in the Seven Fingers journey, which is dual reality. And they're like, let's do the same kind of thing. We want a big storytelling. We're going to have, 12 people or however many it is at this point. But they realized that the story and characters can't rely on the original creators' personalities. So they created literally red versus blue. Like 2 jugglers up against each other, 2 handstand people, 2 hula hoopers.
The juggler.
No, it's not generic, but it allows each person who's performing to bring out their character within the very strict structure of are you team red or team blue and where are you at any point in the show? But when the jugglers do their juggling routines, they do their own juggling routines. They're not doing Patrick's Diablo routine. Or it's difficult for me to say exactly. Like who does what. I haven't seen the dual reality shows. All I've seen is many clips of them shared online, and I'm like, oh, all of these different casts are doing the same things, but it allows the freedom of each person to do their own thing. This same franchise model works great in other ways. I think the Gandini's Smashed show works really well like this. It's a show that is like a circus show, whatever, which is fantastically successful, tours around the world. And these places are these shows are successful because they're not performing for circuses and in juggling venues, although they do, but also that they're performing in everywhere. Dance festivals and theatre festivals, and arts festivals is where these shows get to. And that's how you can see that they're working. But it doesn't actually matter who is lined up in those 9 jugglers in the Smash show.
But still, any person who is in it gives it their own...
Yeah, they're allowed to have their own personality and they find their own space and their own place in the show. Great, it works. It works. And the dual reality is taking that. It hasn't got to the point where it's the Blue Man show, which literally you're covering up their faces, you're doing everything scripted, and like it doesn't matter which Blue Man show you're going to see. It's going to be the same kind of thing. And so that's what I'm saying. The Seven Fingers with the dual reality show have found a formula that they can plug in different casts and have a good show. Again, I've not actually seen that show, but I just want to say about this kind of idea of a show which allows pure human connections to the people on stage. And they kept in that dual reality. There is actually like a sense of like the stuff that's happening is real on stage. Again, I don't know the story, but when they have the endurance competition between the two jugglers, it's like, oh, someone's gonna win. You know, there's like an engagement with the audience. Again, I can't really use it too much of an example because I haven't seen it.
Yes.
But I just wanted to bring that up as like an idea of a show which is fantastically commercially successful and artistically successful, in other words, but like is learning those lessons from Cirque du Soleil of being, we need a show which we can plug people into, but also we don't want to cover people up in animal costumes and alien costumes. I'm saying animal aliens. I'm just saying that everything is in Cirque du Soleil, everything is an essence of something.
Yeah.
Like, and you're removing the humanity from them. And these post-cirque shows, these post-cirque things are like, we're still going to do a circus show, but we're not going to remove the humanity. We're going to allow that humanity to, in fact, we're not just going to allow it to remain. We're going to insert more humanity than any traditional circus beforehand.
Yeah.
And we're going to try and make it to be, even though it's theatrical, we're going to try and make it as real as possible.
Yes. And
yes.
you can get attached to, like, literally with the I imagine that it's like the audience at some point you're going to choose the side that you're rooting for or something like that.
Again, I've not seen the Juliane show. I'm just saying there's a
it allows for that.
It allows for that.
Yeah.
Okay, and by the way, I'm saying is this is the sort of like traditional plus character and story minus costumes. And even though there are costumes, of course, everything that people wear on stage is a costume.
Yeah.
But even in the Juliane show, this is what I want to say, is nobody is wearing a circus costume. Nobody's wearing a traditional circus costume. Nobody is even now wearing the underwear that people wear in the Loft show. Nobody's wearing the, whatever all black costumes that the, cirque, nouveau and contemporary circus people who only wear black and juggle white props and roll around on the floor. There's none of that. It is actually still, we're going for colourful, but we're all wearing colourful outfits which look like normal clothes.
We could have like I go and buy myself the red or blue outfit or whatever. Yeah.
Actually, I'm just going to quickly make sure, let me just type in dual reality just to make sure that the costumes that I'm seeing here they're just sort of like, here they've got some like sporting outfits, t-shirts, red and black things. It's very sports clothes based, like casual sports clothes.
You get yourself clothes that you feel comfortable in, and they have to be blue or red. It has to fit.
And I think that is, it's you feel comfortable performing in them in the same way that people feel comfortable in the Loft show because they're wearing like underwear or like undergarments, but not that comfortable, not that, like, so that's the thing with this Juliane show, they found like this middle lane of colorful, vibrant, but still human. Like each one of these people you can look at and go like, they're cool. I can have a conversation, not with the person playing that character, but with that character.
Yeah.
And in Cirque du Soleil, you see these people. They're beautiful. They're in these fantastic costumes. But you never think, I can connect with those on a human level.
Yeah.
It's always like, I can...
Oh, no, they're like... Either they're superhuman because they're super beautiful, they're the
Ubermensch, like whatever. Like I don't want to bring in like, everyone less, but like Cirque du Soleil, you can definitely see that if you're in that show and you put on a bit of weight or you lost a bit of muscle, they'll be like, get to the gym.
You have to be fit. And
guys, put that muscle back on. Yeah. Ladies, lose that weight or something. This is actually what happens because it's very like body image, negative, positive, which way, body fascist, whatever you want to say. Again, I'm saying Ubermensch and fascism here, but what I'm trying to say is it's very like idealized man or idealized person rather than a character that you can get to know.
Yeah.
My final style of circus, which I want to bring up and talk about, which I think is becoming its own thing, which is what I'd call the tech-circus.
Yeah.
And exemplified with a show like the shows like Junglissimo. I saw one of their shows in 2016 at the EJC in Almere. Yeah. We saw the first 20 minutes of it or so, and we literally walked out because it was so bad. And then I saw a show of theirs in 2019 and thought it was fantastic and really enjoyed it. And I'm like, oh, it was the same people doing the same stuff. But no, what they did in the first show was all of the stuff that open letter was talking, that first open letter, or the first two open letters we're talking about, which maybe I'll find a quote here as well. Oh yeah. So in Nouveau, Cirque Nouveau, and this first, their 2016 show that they did in Almere was very. Circus acts are always interrupt the narrative. It is simply not possible to combine the two in one smooth whole. At the moment, physical danger of presence, the story, the representation simply stops. So it always like, here's some stuff, and I made a note even back then, which I hate shows where people are pretending to do something. And that show, the Junglissimo in 2016, was them. They came out on stage and they like this video screen came up and said, work. And they're like pretending to work by holding juggling clubs and like using them as hammers. Like, and it's like, oh, pretending. Yes. Because as soon as a circus act pretends to do something, it stops being real in a way, and it's impossible to connect with somebody. Yeah. As soon as you pretend, and this is what I was saying before, like when you see all these street show people, someone comes out and they pretend to be a cleaner, or they pretend to be a postman, and they get out some bits and they pretend to post letters, and now they're juggling clubs or something like that. It is the pretending of it is like this huge barrier. But what Junglissimo in the end did was just didn't pretend to be doing a show about something. They're like, no, this is a show about the technical side of putting on a technical show. Yeah. So even though their show was about, I don't know, some journey into stars or whatever, really what the show was leaning into was like, everything that's happening on stage now is real. Even if it's not real, it's video, but this video is really happening in front of you. Yes. We're not pretending to do something, and we're not using this video to pretend that something isn't real. We're not doing like any illusions on stage where we're pretending to build a block. So I can't even remember about that show that I walked out of. But everything that was happening was, here is a technical show about technical stuff. Yeah. And you're going to appreciate this because we are Austrians and Germans, and we're going to do the job of putting on a show with glow clubs, with technical juggling to the highest level that you've ever seen. Yeah. And there's going to be video effects, and you're going to like the video effects, and there's no irony here. That's what you're here for, right? Yes. What we are here for is technical juggling and technical stagecraft and the technical side of the cinema. And there's other shows that work in this way, where the show becomes about the technical aspects of putting on the show. Yeah. And here, because they're Germans and Austrians or whoever it is, like clowns don't even come into it. It's sort of like even like with the the Seven Fingers, there's still some clowning, there's still some comedy, and they're like, nope, Germany, we don't do comedy. I mean, again, there's moments of levity. No, but you understand what I'm saying? Yeah. There's this this precision technical side of stuff, and you can still feel great emotions. You can still look at things and go, that's beautiful, that's skillful, that's amazing. Yeah. But there is never a moment where they're like, ha, winking. It's like, no, we're not winking. We're doing what? I find that refreshing. Yes, that's what I'm saying. This is, again, it's not postmodern, although some of it is kind of very postmodern in it's using video, like having video representations of things that is also going on. Is there is postmodernism there, but there isn't the... But there's sincerity. There's sincerity, which is what you're seeing is real. Yeah. And no animals, no clowns, no ringmaster, hardly any costumes, because everyone there's like standing in the dark juggling and stuff like that. Very little even character. You don't even need to connect with them as humans. Again, there are some characters which are like, oh, I remember this person, but otherwise it's 4 to 6 indistinguishable German/Austrians, like male 20-something jugglers, although some of them probably 30-somethings now. Doing, and again, you don't need anything else, but it works as that. Yeah, and it's successful, and it's commercially, like, they are going and places and performing their stuff, and it works. Yeah, again, and I would class it as a form of circus. Yeah, but it's not traditional circus. It's not Cirque du Soleil. It's not Cirque Nouveau. It's not modern circus. It's not contemporary circus. No, but it is a show which is valid in its own right as a circus/juggling show, which works commercially, which works artistically, which has kind of a statement. Yeah. Even if it doesn't have a statement. But me, now being a dramaturge for the circus and juggling shows that I've seen over the last 5 years, can identify these different trends. Yeah. Also, I think what is part of this trend is to take elements that were
usually and historically part of circus and extract it and make the focus purely on it.
Well,
historically, juggling was part of the circus. It wasn't its own thing, really.
Yeah.
Right? So, and now we've moved through so many stages of different, like, okay, we make a show with an acrobat, and even in the 7 fingers, you have acrobats and whatever.
Yeah, it's one. And you have one of each 7 skills.
Yes,
yeah.
And then you have the juggler, 2 of them at that point.
Yeah.
And in literally then the Jonglissimo show is, or the one version that they are showing is then purely juggling.
Yeah.
Like you extract
a bit of hoop stuff as well.
Yeah, sometimes, but they have certain parts of the show that they go around and they're touring that it really is, I think, is just the juggling.
It's purely juggling, yeah.
And then, so what happened is that it was, so in the original, in the origins, it was so part of it, and now it's been extracted.
Well, I don't think they've extracted the juggling because, to be honest, it could be any skills. I'm saying that they've extracted the technical staging part. You know, like traditional circuses would have staging moments where what you should be impressed with is the technical setup of the stage.
Yeah, okay.
You know, like you would have a moment where there'll be a house and, you know, the clowns also, like they would, was it in Dumbo where there's a burning building? Oh no, that's actually real.
I've never seen that.
Okay, either way, there's a thing in circuses they'd often bring on huge set pieces.
Yeah.
And the huge set piece itself would be impressive just because the set is very impressive.
Yes, the scene in its own right was...
The lighting was impressive. It was like when electrification came along and these circuses could, you know, they could do shows indoors during the day, and you're sort of like, oh, it's just impressive to have that lighting set up, to be in the limelight because the light was... you know, like the that type of stuff. Now we have video screens. Let's bring that up, you know. And what's the next step in that? It's not my turn. It's not my part to. It's not my place to speculate. It's my place to achieve that next step. I think with my video projection, with my 3-ball and video, I was doing very early stuff in that. Like I was one of the first. Well, I say one of the first. I was early to the game of making something commercially successful and performance viable to have a video projector projecting postmodernism around me.
Yes. Yeah. And using this medium.
Yeah, and I was like, what could be the next thing I could do? And every next step that I tried to take, you know, with light painting, with like all this other stuff that now Jonglissimo is doing, and of course they've taken it way further on. But I've always come up with this stuff, and in the end it was really difficult for me because I was like, either my whole show has to be based around a video screen and effects on a video screen, or I need to do one of those things or 2 of those things in my show, and my 3-ball and video routine is so good that it's impossible for me to top that in the same show.
Yeah.
And also, my superpower as a performer is, you know, my personality and charisma and juggling skills. Yeah. And I realized me doing a show which was mostly me being in the dark, doing light painting, not going to be the thing. You know, that's not going to be the thing, even though I experimented with it and I was like, there's something here. Yeah. With this light glow juggling and stuff. I saw so many other people do glow acts around about the same time, mid-2000s, like mid-noughties or whatever. Yeah. And I was like, everybody I see doing this, I'm disappointed because it's removing what I like about them, which is their personality and their cheeky grin and their the performance. Yeah, and then they do a glow act or a light act or a video act, and I'm like, I can't see them. Yeah. And no offense to the Jonglissimo guys, I'm not there for their sparkling personalities. Their charisma on stage when they're performing club juggling is great, but they're not talking, they're not doing all the rest of the stuff. So if they take away being able to identify each one of them by their facial expressions, and I can just see their juggling and the patterns and the video screen, it's not. That is a step up, or it's a lateral step or a step up, rather than for all the people who I like seeing their faces and they did a show in a glow show and I'm like, oh, there's some patterns there, but you know, I like you as a person. Yeah.
But I think it gives the opportunity to the kind of performer who doesn't want or has this.
No,
they don't want to be like all smooth and like flowy with their body and whatever. They just want to do the juggling, and that gives the opportunity to this sort of performer to just do that and do a really good job and do a really in one way, artistic job then as well. Like, I would never say, oh, this is less artistic.
Yeah.
Because
again, I didn't want to attach any value judgments to any of this. I'm talking about the qualities of them.
I wanted to get back to tying back to the open letters.
Oh, right, yeah,
with the artistic aspect of the juggling and the circus and the this kind of stuff.
I'll wrap that up.
Yes.
All of those discussions were based around funding.
Yeah.
The only person it's important to, if something is art or if something is new or if something's weird or if it's making a statement is, and this is what I kind of got frustrated about listening back to that previous podcast I was talking about, is that I never really clarified, is none of this, you don't need to worry about any of this.
No. Unless
you're looking for an audience, and it helps to know what kind of audience you're going to go for.
Yeah.
Or if you're looking for funding, arts funding.
Absolutely.
And Bouke Levins mostly seem to have anxiety that in the Netherlands or Belgium or wherever she was working, they don't get arts funding like they do in France.
Yeah.
And so everything would be like, but to be taken serious as art, we need to challenge the status quo. We need to do this. We need to do. There's at the end of her there's it goes, let us once again enter into that exciting area of difference between practice and performance that is characteristic of every art form. Let us once again yearn longingly, fully aware that the freedom we seek is an impossible goal. Let's depart from shows that confirm the norm and let us invent new myths. And all of the first two letters that she wrote, the two letters that she wrote, were all about, let's do this, let's break out, let's go for it. This, it has to represent this, it has to break down colonialism and all of these different things like that. And I just, when I was reading those back in 2016, 2017, I was like, there's lots of let us do this, let us do that. And then the follow-up to that was very much, commercial artists agree to abide by the demand for entertainment. So in other words, stop telling us that we have to put aside entertainment. We, as commercial artists, agree that we are entertainers and we're going to provide entertainment.
Yeah.
We can't just come and shit on the floor and say, but it's art. It's like, but we don't want to do that.
Yeah.
So things are different for circus practices which understands themselves as art. That's because in contemporary art, the audience doesn't need to be entertained, not necessarily. In fact, the artist gets to define her own ends. She becomes her own local resolution of reality. So this is saying that, yes, it's all good for you to say, I get to define what art is and I don't have to be entertaining. And that's fantastic. If you don't have to be commercially successful, you can just get your funding from whatever funding body you're trying to convince with these open letters that you're writing that circuses can be taken seriously as an art form.
Yeah. And if you get the funding, you don't need to mind what the audience thinks of what you do.
Yeah. Levins also imagines a very particular task for art, to stir up social and aesthetic fields, to take the flaming sword of critique to each, to make hidden truths public, and to motivate public engagement with them through persuasive staging. And it's true. It's true. That is one of the roles of art.
Yes.
But isn't it weird that even the examples that I'm talking about now, sure, some people are trying to take the sword of critique to something social, something. But so many people, again, mostly the practitioners of the art, they want to entertain people. Yeah. It's validating for them to be commercially successful. Like, I am very pleased that I can do the same show for jugglers as I can for non-jugglers and get paid by non-juggling audience to do the same thing that I'd perform for jugglers and make the same statements and do the same things. I was just talking about restructuring my second show again, because I realized, I did this whole 23 show and that was going to become my second show.
Yeah.
And big part of it did, but then I never actually let it infest to the rest of my show.
Yes.
To be a show about, am I a successful juggler or not? Or am I a middle-aged juggler or not? Or like, where am I now in my place in my life?
Yeah.
My first show
as the follow-up to
my
your first
cruise show is all about being a new juggler and getting into juggling and making my first steps and winning my first juggling competitions, establishing myself as a juggler. And I wanted my second show to be grappling with greatness and middle age. So
realities.
And I realized I did that second show. I mean, I did my 23 show that I did at the British Juggling Convention, and I took part of that and just kind of put the middle part of my 23 show into the middle part of my second cruise ship show. And I realized, it didn't go throughout.
Yeah.
I didn't tie it all the way through. So now I realize, actually, I need to finish that project, which is to let that go all the way through my second show. That I need to come out on stage and say, well, my first show was my start as a juggler, and now I'm going to be talking about being a professional, successful adult working in the world and traveling the world and doing my show successfully, and not try and hide behind that. In my first show, I'm always the underdog in what I do. In the second show, I need to confirm that I'm not the underdog. I'm a successful, proficient, good juggler, and I'm going to do virtuoso tricks and routines, and you should clap at me because I've been doing this for 20 years now and I'm very good at it. That's what I wanted my second show to become, but I kind of dropped the ball on that for the last year. Because I was like, hey, I did the 23 show and I'm doing these new tricks on my show. Success! And I'm like, oh, I didn't finish the project. And I only noticed that listening back to that Notes on Creation podcast that we did. I was like, oh, I never finished that. I never finished transforming my second show into what I learned from the 23 show. Yeah, it's a good... my BJC show. A good observation there. So yeah, it's a big part of it is the funding. The final letter, the final open letter from that last guy, Sebastian Kahn or whatever it is. He ends up, the goal should not be better shows, but greater artistic freedom. And I agreed with everything he said up until the very last line, where he also threw in a should. And like let us do this, and I'm like, right, you're just saying that you're what we should all be doing, and then like the goal should not be better shows but greater artistic freedom, and I'm like, I'm not quite sure I agree with that either. Again, I'm all for greater artistic freedom, and that's what he's talking about in conversation with Bauker Levins. But in the end, I'm like, I also want the goal to be better shows. I would love more people to sacrifice a bit of artistic freedom to have better shows. But I'm saying that as an audience member who wants to see better shows. But I do see that. I do really see that. See that what? In the show, in literally the shows that we just talked about, in the more recent solo shows that we've seen. I can see that people are getting to the essence of having a critique of some sorts. Yeah. Getting it across in a very postmodern way, but still being true and letting the emotional attachment happen, and not and so in the end they do step over into the next the next door. Yeah, there is another door, and I think jugglers getting there. I just want to mention again Carlos Cerrato, who does the bits with the paper cubes that float around or something like that. He made the top 40 jugglers, 23 this year. I sort of saw his show that he shared on the internet from the EJC. Really enjoyed it because, again, it's definitely a show about a show. It's he's got the Metamodern thing. Like he is presenting emotions and allowing people to have the same emotions as him as well. Yes. So there I wouldn't say there's hope out there. I'm just saying there's lots of different ways that people are taking circus and juggling at the moment, and I'm very happy for the different directions. Yeah. I'm happy that me too. That Junglissimo and the Gandinis and the Seven Fingers are allowing or giving lots of employment opportunities for jugglers to be cast members and to take those things. I think that's fantastic. But also I'm really happy with even the Gandinis and Wes Peden and Catherine and Carlo and these, again, other shows that I've seen and I've been keeping up with and love to see more, where people are going out into different ways. Zach McAllister as well, I mentioned him earlier. Like, I think it's fantastic that these people are also still working on these shows and doing solo shows and things, and I want to see more of it. Me too. I think we're finished. What's that, an hour and 20 minutes talking about this kind of stuff? Yeah, I think we're done. Thank you very much for all our Patreon supporters. Do you have anything else you want to say here? No, I'm looking forward to the EJC, which is coming up. Yes, our next podcast might be an EJC podcast. Yeah. It could be a post-EJC review, could be talking about it. Maybe we'll record something at the EJC. Maybe we'll find someone at the EJC and record a podcast with them. Who knows? I don't know. I'm just talking at the top of my head. Fun idea. So that's it. The next video that I'm going to do it might be Big Tricks 4. Have you got enough material together? Well, here's the thing. I wasn't sure if I did have it. And then I looked and I realized I started working on Big Tricks in January. And then I started working on Big Tricks again in May. Yeah. And so I started it twice. And there must be a reason why I haven't done it. Yeah. I don't know. Maybe I'll take Big Tricks in a different direction. Could be. Could be a good idea. Mix it up. The next video will then probably, I'm going to do a review of my cathedral juggling rings. I'll do a review of those.
Yeah, that's been on the list for a while.
It has been on the list for a while, but I finally got to the balance pole thing as well. Either way, hang out for that, and let's do this conversation again in another 5 years.
Okay,
let's do it. Episode. What we'd be up to, episode 105 or something of this podcast. Let's talk about the more of the new directions of circus shows. Mm-hmm. It's so difficult to do it because there's modern circus and new circus is something different. It's difficult to say. Either way, we'll have another conversation in 5 years, and I can dramaturge my way through those as well, and
Let's do
work out what the direction is and what's going on in the world.
Oh, I'm looking forward to that.
Thanks a lot for listening, and we'll catch you next time.
Goodbye.